You ever witness a moment so raw, so unexpected, that it flips the script right in front of your eyes? One that makes you question every judgment you've ever made about someone based on how they look, what they wear, or what job they do. Because what you're about to see isn't just a story, it's a reality check. It all started in a dusty auto shop on the edge of a small town, where one man's ego collided with a woman's pride, skill, and something he never saw coming. The moment he refused to pay, assuming she couldn't possibly know what she was doing under that hood, he didn't just make a mistake. He sparked a showdown that left every single person in that garage speechless. And trust me, you're going to want to stick around to see how this ends, because what she did next didn't just shut him up, it flipped the entire dynamic on its head. Now, I know why you clicked. The title pulled you in, right? You want to know what happened when this customer tried to walk away without paying her. What was under that hood? What did she do that made everyone in the shop stop dead in their tracks? You're thinking, is this one of those feel-good justice moments? And yes, this is that kind of story. But it's also more than that. It's about respect. It's about assumptions. And it's about what happens when someone underestimates the wrong person. See, we all love a good comeback. We cheer when the underdog rises. And this mechanic? She didn't just rise, she owned the moment. But before we get to the part that left the entire shop in shock, let's take a moment to really connect. You and me right here. Because let's be honest, how many times have you seen someone get treated differently just because of their gender, or their age, or the way they talk? Maybe it's happened to you. Maybe you've been the one passed over, second-guessed, or judged before you even had a chance to prove yourself. And if that's ever been you, then this story is going to hit you in the gut. Because it's not just about a car, it's about courage, grit, and standing up when someone tries to put you in a box. I want you to picture the scene for a second. It's late afternoon, the sun is hanging low, casting long shadows across the pavement outside a small-town garage that's been around for decades. Inside, the air is thick with grease, oil, and the low hum of hard work. You've got wrenches clinking, tires rolling, someone blasting classic rock from a dusty old radio in the corner. And in the middle of all that noise and hustle stands Natalie, a female mechanic with years of experience, sleeves rolled up, hands stained with the proof of a hard day's work. She's not flashy, not loud, just focused, sharp, and respected by those who know what she can do. But today's different. The man who just pulled up in a sleek black BMW doesn't know Natalie. Doesn't care to. He walks in with that swagger, the kind you see in people who think the world owes them something. Right away, he's eyeing the place like it's beneath him. Grease on the floor, too blue-collar. The waiting room, not a cappuccino machine in sight. And Natalie? Just a woman in overalls. Probably just answers the phones, right? Wrong. But he doesn't know that yet. She greets him with a nod, no nonsense, and gets right to work. He's complaining about a noise, some knocking sound under the hood. It's probably the engine mount, he says, as if he's testing her. But Natalie doesn't flinch. She doesn't need to guess. Within minutes, she's diagnosing the problem, pulling out tools, showing the kind of knowledge you can't fake. Years in the game. Countless engines. She's done this more times than he's even opened his hood. She gets it fixed in record time, saves him a huge bill in the process by spotting something the dealership would have missed, and then, just as she hands him the invoice, he does it. He laughs. A cold, dismissive chuckle. Says something like, "I'm not paying that. This can't be right. You didn't even do that much." And in that moment, the entire energy in the shop shifts. The guys working in the back pause. Tools go still. Eyes turn. You could feel the tension like static in the air. But Natalie? She doesn't raise her voice. Doesn't argue. She simply walks back to the car, opens the hood, and what she does next, it silences the entire room. Now listen, don't scroll away just yet. You need to see this moment, because this is where it gets good. This is the part you came for. This is the reason this story is climbing the YouTube trending list. It's the twist that's got everyone talking. You're about to witness what happens when the person you thought was powerless turns out to be the smartest one in the room. And the way she flips the situation? It's not just clever. It's legendary. Trust me, You don't want to miss the look on his face when he realizes he messed with the wrong mechanic. Throughout the story, we'll meet more characters that help color in the bigger picture, like Mike, the old-school technician who's seen it all and never bets against Natalie. Or Cassie, the front desk assistant who's got a heart of gold and a mouth like a sailor. Together, they form this little world inside the shop, a world where people might sweat and swear and grind through 12-hour shifts, but where honesty, skill, and heart still matter. And when that's challenged, oh, they don't just watch, they back each other up. That's what makes this story more than just one epic moment. It's about community. It's about pride. It's about never backing down just because someone tells you don't belong. But look, I get it. You've got 1,000 other videos you could be watching right now. Stories of instant karma, satisfying revenge, hidden talents being revealed. But I promise you, what you're about to see here, it's got all of that and more. It's real. It's raw. It's unforgettable. And by the time you reach the end, you're not just going to be cheering for Natalie. You're going to feel something. Maybe pride. Maybe outrage. Maybe hope. Maybe all three. That's the power of this story. And just when you think you've seen the best part, when you think she's done enough to prove him wrong, she takes it one step further. Not out of spite, not to embarrass him, but to make a point that everyone watching needs to hear. The moment she flips the script, she doesn't just change his mind. She teaches a lesson we all could stand to remember. So, if you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever been told you weren't enough, then this one's for you. But here's the catch, what she revealed under that hood. It wasn't just a fix. It wasn't just some trick to make a point.
It was so much more than that.
And when the camera zoomed in, when the shop went dead quiet, and when his jaw literally dropped, that's when we realized this wasn't just about a car anymore. And right now, you're just seconds away from seeing it. So don't go anywhere. Because what she shows next changes everything. Before we can understand what Natalie revealed under that hood and why it left a grown man stunned into silence, we have to rewind just a bit. Because things like this don't happen in a vacuum. People like Natalie don't just appear out of nowhere with steel in their spine and oil under their fingernails, ready to school the world on what real competence looks like. There's a history here. A path paved in hard-earned respect, long nights, and too many moments when she had to bite her tongue just to keep her job. You see, Natalie wasn't always the lead mechanic in this shop. A few years ago, she was working in a chain oil change place across town, the kind where the corporate suits cared more about upselling cabin air filters than actually fixing anything that mattered. Back then, she was passed over again and again for promotions, watched less experienced guys get handed titles she earned twice over. But Natalie didn't just grind through it. She learned everything she could. Every repair manual, every diagnostic code, every single system down to the torque specs and timing belts. And she took all of that with her when she finally walked away from that dead-end job and into something she could build herself. The shop she works in now. It's a second chance kind of place. Not fancy, not franchise. Just honest work. It's owned by Ray, a grizzled Vietnam vet who's been rebuilding engines longer than some of his customers have been alive. He took a chance on Natalie when she showed up one day with a resume written in grease and grit. Didn't ask too many questions, just handed her a busted-out alternator and said, "Let's see what you've got." She had it bench-tested, rebuilt, and back in under an hour. From that day on, she was part of the crew. But lately, things have been different. The jobs are getting tougher. The customers more entitled. And Natalie? She's been feeling that pressure build, slow and steady like a ticking time bomb. Especially ever since that guy, Trevor, started coming around. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Trevor isn't your average customer. He's been to the shop 3 times in the last month, each time with a different story. First, it was a tire issue that turned out to be nothing more than a loose valve stem. Then a mysterious check engine light that Natalie traced to a faulty gas cap. Every time, Trevor had that same smug attitude, the same unwillingness to believe that a woman could know more about his car than he did. He'd question every charge, challenge every fix. He'd even mutter under his breath to the younger techs, trying to stir doubt. But today he came in with a real problem. A grinding noise deep in the engine bay. One that screamed timing chain failure if you knew what to listen for. Natalie knew right away. But instead of telling him, she made a choice to show him. To prove, once and for all, that he had no idea what kind of storm he was messing with. But here's where the mystery starts to twist. Because while Natalie was under the hood diagnosing the damage, something else was going on behind the scenes. The parts shipment that was supposed to arrive by noon never showed up. Mike, the parts runner, swore he ordered everything first thing in the morning. The tracking said it was delivered, but no package. Then Cassie noticed someone had logged into the shop's inventory system from an outside IP address, making changes to the order history. That's not normal. And neither is the fact that Ray, the owner, had been acting off lately, snapping at employees, forgetting schedules, and making weird phone calls late at night from the office. Natalie hadn't said anything yet, but she was paying attention. Something wasn't adding up. And there's more. Just last week, someone broke into the shop's garage after hours. Nothing was taken, at least nothing obvious. But one of the diagnostic scanners had been tampered with, and a camera was found half buried under the oil drums near Bay 4. When Natalie brought it up to Ray, he brushed it off, said it was probably just some punk kids messing around. But the look in his eyes said something else. Like maybe he knew more than he was letting on. Natalie didn't push yet, but she made a mental note. And now, with Trevor suddenly refusing to pay, right in the middle of this growing pile of weird coincidences, she couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about a guy trying to dodge a bill. What if someone had told Trevor to come in? What if this was more than just an entitled customer trying to rattle her? Natalie had seen his kind before, but there was something different about him this time. The way he kept glancing at the office door, the way he hesitated when he handed over the keys, like he was waiting for something or someone. And then there's that moment, just before he laughed in her face and said he wasn't paying, where he pulled out his phone and sent a quick text. Not a call, just a message. She caught the screen reflection in the chrome of the bumper, a short message and a strange contact name. Nothing that made sense at the time, but it stuck with her. So now, standing in front of his car, hood open, engine still warm from her work, Natalie isn't just thinking about the repair. She's running through every odd detail, every inconsistency, every strange look and missing part. And as she leans in, double-checking her work for the third time, something else catches her eye, something tucked deep behind the air intake, wedged where it shouldn't be. And this is where things really start to twist. But what she sees, what she pulls out in front of everyone, doesn't just answer a question. It sparks a whole new set of them. Because whatever it is, it doesn't belong in that engine bay. It's not a car part. Not even close. And when she holds it up, the color drains from Trevor's face so fast that even the other mechanics start to notice. This isn't just about refusing to pay anymore. This is about something much bigger. Something planned. And suddenly, Natalie realizes she may have been dragged into something far beyond spark plugs and serpentine belts. Now you're probably thinking, what did she find? What's going on behind the scenes? Why is Trevor really here? And what's Ray hiding with those late-night calls? Hold tight because you're not even halfway through the truth. This isn't just a mechanic story anymore. It's a layered web of secrets, sabotage, and someone trying very hard to make sure Natalie doesn't uncover what's really going on. And what she does next, well, that's going to blow this whole thing wide open. Natalie didn't say a word at first. She just held the object in her hand, arm extended, fingers slightly trembling. Not from fear, but from a sudden jolt of clarity mixed with disbelief. It was a small device, no larger than a car key fob, but its purpose was clear. A GPS tracker, the kind used to monitor movement without the driver ever knowing. But this wasn't a standard model. It had a strange casing, unmarked, like it had been custom-built to avoid detection. She looked up just in time to catch Trevor glancing at it, eyes wide, lips parted, like he recognized it instantly but wasn't prepared for it to be seen. Then, as if snapping back into character, he scoffed and tried to play it off, muttering something about modern cars being full of junk electronics. But Natalie knew better. And so did the others watching from the bay doors. the ones who had been there long enough to read body language like a check engine light. Before she could press further, Ray stepped out of the office. His face was stone. Not curious. Not surprised. Just unreadable. He saw the tracker. Saw the way Trevor stiffened. And instead of asking questions, he told everyone to get back to work. No debate, no explanation. Just that gruff voice that carried the weight of authority and a warning not to push. Natalie didn't argue, but her gut twisted. That was the moment she knew something was seriously wrong. She slipped the tracker into her pocket, wiped her hands, and walked into the break room, needing a minute to think. That's when she saw her locker, wide open. She knew she'd closed it that morning. Locked it, just like always. But now it hung open like someone had gone through it, and fast. Her spare phone was gone. The old one she didn't use anymore but kept just in case, the one that still had her call logs, old voicemails, even a few photos from the week her last job ended. And just like that, Natalie felt the ground beneath her start to shift. That phone held things she never wanted in the wrong hands. Not because they were illegal, but because they were personal. And because they tied her to a decision she made years ago, one she buried and hoped would never come back. Back when she left that corporate shop, it wasn't on good terms. She hadn't told Ray the whole truth when he hired her, just enough to earn a clean start. What she didn't say was that she'd been pressured to cover up a string of faulty repairs. She blew the whistle. Quietly. Sent an anonymous tip to a local news outlet. A week later, a fire broke out in one of the company's service bays. It was ruled accidental. But Natalie knew better. She was the last person to clock out that night. The only one who saw a strange car in the back lot. The only one who saw a man in a black hoodie walking away from the building just minutes before the alarm went off. She never talked to the press. Never claimed credit. Just ran. Changed shops. Changed her name on the certifications. And tried to forget it all. But now it felt like someone hadn't forgotten her. That suspicion turned to dread when she stepped outside and found her car door slightly ajar. Inside, her glove box had been ransacked. Papers gone. Registration. Insurance. Even her small notebook where she kept job notes and part numbers. The only thing left behind was a sticky note on the dash. No words. Just a red X. Natalie didn't panic. Not visibly. But inside, her thoughts were racing. Someone was watching her. And they wanted her to know it. She couldn't tell if Trevor was part of it or just a pawn. Couldn't tell if Ray's cold reaction meant he was trying to protect her or was already in on it. And then, just as she was about to walk back inside, a voice stopped her in her tracks. It came from behind the shop's dumpster, low and urgent. You need to stop asking questions. She turned quickly, but no one was there. Just the sound of tires screeching from the street and a shadow disappearing into a gray SUV speeding off. Back inside, she tried to act normal. Tried to blend back into the routine. But she couldn't stop replaying the last hour in her head. Who else knew about her past? Was someone from the old company back for revenge? Or was this something worse, something new entirely? That night, after closing, she decided to check the shop's security cameras. But when she logged in, every file from the last 48 hours was missing. Wiped clean. No backup. Nothing. Natalie wasn't just dealing with a difficult customer anymore. She was caught in something tangled and deliberate. And now she couldn't trust anyone. Not Ray. Not Mike. Not even Cassie, who'd been her closest ally in the shop for months, but who lately had been taking secret phone calls and asking odd questions about Natalie's past. The betrayal didn't feel confirmed, but it lingered, coiling around her like smoke. And just when she thought she might be able to piece something together, just when she sat down with that GPS tracker and popped the case open to inspect the circuit board, her phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number. Stop now, or next time we won't miss. Attached was a photo. Grainy.
Zoomed in.
But unmistakable. It was Natalie sitting in the break room just 5 minutes ago. And that's when she realized the camera hidden in bay for last week hadn't been the only one. Natalie stared at the photo on her phone, her heartbeat pounding in her ears, so loud it drowned out the distant hum of the shop lights. The image was recent, taken just moments ago, And that meant whoever sent it wasn't some faceless online threat or some guy hiding behind a screen halfway across the country.
No.
They were here,
Nearby.
watching. And that realization shifted something in her. Fear didn't grip her, it sharpened her. Made her more alert, more focused, more determined to dig deeper, even if the ground beneath her was starting to feel like quicksand. But just as she stood up to confront Ray, or Cassie, or even Trevor, someone whose face might finally betray their silence, her phone buzzed again. But this time it wasn't another threat. It was a name she hadn't seen on her screen in over 6 months. Jordan. Her younger brother. They hadn't spoken since she left her old job. Not because of a falling out, but because she asked him to stay out of her mess. Jordan had his own life, and Natalie didn't want him caught in the fallout if the whistleblowing ever came back to haunt her. But now, here he was. A text. No greeting. Just one line. Did you send me this envelope? Her stomach dropped. She dialed immediately. No answer. She tried again. Voicemail. So she left the shop, jumped into her truck, half-packed with her mobile tools and scanner pads, and sped across town to his place. The whole drive there, she replayed their last conversation. He had warned her to keep her head down, told her that corporations didn't forget, even when you thought they did. At the time, she thought he was just being overprotective. But now he might have been right all along. When she reached his apartment, she found the envelope sitting on the kitchen counter, already opened. Inside was a single page, printed in black and white. It was a screenshot, an internal email from her previous employer's headquarters. It was dated 3 days ago. The subject line, locate former employee, Natalie Torres. No other context. Just a note in red ink at the bottom. Known alias, Natalie Ray. Now working at local service shops. Flag if cited. And below that, what looked like a grainy still from a security camera feed showing her at Ray's shop, clear as day, time-stamped just 2 mornings ago. The message was chilling enough, but what made Natalie's skin crawl was that it had been mailed to Jordan, not her. Someone was dragging him into this. On purpose. To rattle her. To break her concentration. Then came the knock at the door. Not hard. Not urgent. But steady. And too quiet to be a delivery. Natalie signaled to Jordan to stay back as she walked to the peephole, but there was no one there. Just the hallway. Empty. She opened the door slowly, cautiously. Nothing. But just as she turned to shut it again, she noticed something on the floor. A folded mechanic's rag. Her rag. The one she kept in her back pocket, embroidered with her initials. The one she lost last night and assumed had fallen behind one of the lifts. But now it was here, folded clean, placed carefully on Jordan's welcome mat like a signature. Her heart skipped. Someone had been close enough to take it, close enough to drop it off, and brazen enough to leave it without hiding the threat. Back at the shop the next morning, everything looked normal, on the surface. But under the surface there was a shift. Mike avoided her completely, which was out of character. Cassie, usually bubbly and talkative, seemed preoccupied, more jumpy than usual. Even Ray didn't offer his standard morning grunt. It was like everyone had been briefed on something, and she hadn't been invited to the meeting. That's when she decided to confront Cassie. Quietly. Off the record. They met behind the tire rack at lunch. Natalie showed her the tracker, the texts, and the photo from the break room. Cassie went pale. She confessed that 2 days ago, she also received something weird. An anonymous message slipped under her windshield wiper. It didn't say much. Just a printout of Natalie's former company ID badge with the words, "Ask her why she really left." At first, Cassie thought it was a joke. Maybe even Trevor messing around. But now, seeing all this, her hands were shaking. She admitted that she'd mentioned Natalie's past in a call with a friend who worked at a different shop chain, and ever since that call, she felt like she was being watched. Natalie wanted to believe Cassie's panic was genuine, but a seed of doubt had already taken root. If Cassie had talked, even by accident, who else knew? And why would someone go through this much trouble for a mechanic? That evening, Natalie dug out her old tablet, the one she hadn't used in over a year. She had stored documents on it, stuff she was too afraid to upload to the cloud. Old emails, repair logs, even a report she drafted but never sent, detailing how several executives at her old company approved shortcuts in vehicle repairs to inflate quarterly bonuses. She thought it was over. She thought burying the report would be enough. But now, someone wanted it back, or wanted her silenced before it surfaced. She scrolled through the files, looking for patterns, looking for anything that connected her current life to that past one. And that's when she saw it.
A name.
A name that didn't make sense at first. Listed under vendor delivery contacts for an outside parts contractor. Trevor Lansing. Same last name as the Trevor working in her shop. A rare name. Too rare to be coincidence. She searched deeper. Trevor Lansing was listed as a subcontractor who handled part allocations for damaged inventory during the exact months her old employer was under audit for fraudulent replacement claims. The pieces were starting to connect, but the picture was still incomplete. Was Trevor planted at the shop? Was he watching her for them? Or was he working a side hustle, using her location to finish a job someone else had started? Just as she was pulling up a background check page, her power cut out. All the lights, the screen, the room, everything. And outside her window, in the darkness, a figure stood silently in the alley, staring up at her second-floor apartment. Not moving, just watching. And that's when Natalie realized she wasn't just being followed. She was being hunted. Natalie barely slept that night. Her body was exhausted, but her mind refused to rest. Even after the power returned a few hours later, even after she triple-locked her doors and armed the motion detectors on every corner of her small apartment, she couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't alone. Her eyes darted toward every shadow, and even the creak of the wooden floor beneath her feet felt like it belonged to someone else. She kept replaying that image in her head, that motionless silhouette standing in the alley, just watching her. No message. No action. Just the presence of someone who wanted her to know they were there, and that they could come closer anytime they pleased. The silence was more threatening than a shout. It was calculated.
Cold.
And now it was personal. By morning, she was already back at the shop, trying to shake the unease by burying herself in routine, checking fluids, running diagnostics, updating work orders. But it was like trying to patch a leaking pipe with duct tape. She couldn't focus. Every time she looked over her shoulder, she thought she saw someone watching from the office window. Every time a customer walked in, she scanned their face too long, wondering if they were here for a car or for her. But then came the moment that shattered the illusion of safety completely. Cassie didn't show up for her shift. Not just late, completely absent. No call, no text, no notice. At first, Ray just brushed it off. Young people get hungover, they forget, but Natalie knew better. Cassie wasn't the kind of person to disappear. Not without a reason. And especially not after what they had talked about behind the tire rack just the day before. Natalie tried calling her phone. Straight to voicemail. She tried messaging her on every app they used, even old ones they hadn't touched in months. Nothing. And that's when she decided to check something she hadn't even considered before, Cassie's emergency contact form. She logged into the employee portal from the back office, hoping to find a clue, an address, anything. But what she found sent a chill down her spine. Cassie's profile had been locked, flagged for internal audit, just hours after she missed her shift. That didn't happen for no-shows. That happened when someone wiped a record clean, as if Cassie had never worked there at all. Her name was erased from the active schedule, her badge deactivated, even the last few days of her clock-ins removed from the log. It was like she'd been deleted. Natalie backed out of the portal quickly, realizing that if someone was inside the system scrubbing files, they'd see her access logs too. She sat in silence, her heart racing, her thoughts spiraling. Who had the power to do that? Was it Ray? He didn't seem like the tech-savvy type, but he had access. Or Trevor. He had been oddly quiet all morning, not even glancing her way. And there was another possibility she hadn't considered until now. Someone higher up. Someone they didn't even see every day. Maybe someone from corporate had caught wind of Natalie's past, and now they were sweeping the shop for liabilities. Maybe Cassie said too much, and Natalie was next. She left early, told Ray she wasn't feeling well, and took a different route home. She noticed the black SUV in her rearview mirror just 3 blocks from the shop. At first, it was subtle. Could have been anyone. Could have been nothing. But when she took a hard left down a side street and then another right through a grocery store parking lot, the SUV followed, always 2 cars behind. It never pulled up beside her. Never sped up or slowed down noticeably. Just stayed with her like a shadow. She tested it further by making an unexpected U-turn and then circling back onto the highway. Still there. Same distance. Same unmarked plates. And now she knew this wasn't paranoia. This was surveillance. Instead of going home, she drove straight to Jordan's place. She needed to warn him. She needed someone to know everything just in case she vanished next. But when she arrived, the front door was already open. Not kicked in. Not damaged. Just slightly ajar, like someone forgot to close it all the way. She parked crooked on the curb and rushed in, calling his name. The apartment was silent, too silent. The TV was still on in the background, frozen on the YouTube homepage. His keys were on the counter. His wallet was there too. But he wasn't. No note. No signs of a struggle. Just the faint scent of coffee gone cold and a chair pushed back like someone left in a hurry or was taken. She ran to the bathroom, then the bedroom, opening every closet, checking under the bed. Nothing. His phone sat on the nightstand, locked. But next to it, something odd. A small, folded note. On it was one line, printed in the same mechanical font as the earlier messages she'd received. You were warned to stop digging. She sat down on the edge of his bed, her hands shaking. This was no longer about corporate secrets. No longer about some old report or a buried scandal. This was bigger. More dangerous. And it was tightening around her fast. She thought she had been cautious. She thought she could outsmart whoever was coming after her. But they had been ahead of her every step. They knew where she lived, where her brother lived, who her coworkers were. They erased Cassie without leaving a trace. And now Jordan was gone too. Her thoughts twisted inward. Had she made a mistake by ever coming back into the industry? Had she underestimated how far certain people would go to protect their reputation, their money, their secrets? She remembered what one of her old mentors used to say in hushed tones when they reviewed sensitive repair documents. The problem isn't the engine, it's the people who built it to fail. And maybe now, she was finally realizing just how deep the failure went. She drove back toward the shop just after sunset but didn't go inside. Instead, she parked across the street and waited.
Watched.
Took photos of every employee who left, every delivery that arrived, every stranger who stepped in through the front door. If they wanted a game of shadows, she would play it, but not without backup. She sent one last message to the only person left she thought she could trust, her old mentor, Elias, the one who first taught her how to spot rigged diagnostics and invisible tampering. She hadn't spoken to him in a year, not since he disappeared into early retirement after being bought out. But if anyone still knew how this web was spun, it would be him. And as she stared down at her phone, waiting for a response, a new message popped up instead. No sender. No subject. Just one sentence. Next time, we won't just watch. Natalie didn't move. Her hand clenched her phone so tightly she could feel the casing flex beneath her fingers. That message, short, blunt, and delivered with chilling confidence, was the final crack in whatever thin layer of safety she had left. She scanned the street in front of the shop, searching for anyone who might be watching. The traffic was light. A couple walked their dog across the intersection. A delivery driver unloaded packages from a van at the end of the block. Nothing seemed out of place, but that was exactly the problem. Whoever was behind this was blending in perfectly. They weren't hiding in the shadows anymore. They were right there, watching her watch them.
Her phone buzzed again.
This time, it wasn't a threat. It was Elias. Just a short reply. Meet me.
Now.
Don't trust anyone. Attached was a pin drop. It led to a small, half-abandoned garage 30 minutes outside town. She didn't hesitate. Within minutes, she was on the road, eyes flicking between the mirror and the pavement, praying she wasn't being followed. The old garage looked like it hadn't seen life in years. Faded signage, broken windows, weeds pushing through cracked asphalt, but the security camera above the door was new, its tiny red light blinking like a heartbeat. He was waiting inside. Older, grayer, and wearing the kind of look that only comes from being haunted by what you know. "Natalie," Elias said, his voice tight with urgency. "You were never supposed to come back. I tried to warn you years ago, but they made sure you'd never hear it." She asked about Cassie, about Jordan, about the digital erasure and the surveillance, about the messages and the threats. But Elias didn't flinch. "You're looking in the wrong direction," he said. "This isn't just about you or your family. This is about what they buried under that shop, literally." He pulled out an old external drive, the kind built like a tank, scarred from age and heat. "Before I left, I copied the original schematics for the shop's diagnostic system. You know how we thought the software was just buggy? It wasn't. It was programmed to misdiagnose certain failures, make the cars look safe when they weren't. And it didn't just happen once or twice. It was systematic. Corporate signed off on it. If you dig deeper, you'll find lawsuits sealed in arbitration, accident reports altered, even death investigations brushed aside." Natalie's stomach turned. That explained the phantom failures, the untraceable faults she kept seeing in customer vehicles. But why her? Why now? Elias looked her straight in the eye. "Because you were part of the original test group. They selected mechanics from military bases, tech schools, anywhere with strong diagnostic skills. You didn't know it then, but you were being used to fine-tune the cover-up. Your shop was one of 6 testing sites. And you, Natalie, you were the only one who flagged the inconsistencies. You submitted reports. You asked questions. And they couldn't have that. That's why you were blacklisted. That's why you were forced out." She stared at him, reeling. Everything she thought was a result of her own stubbornness, her refusal to play along. It wasn't just personal. It was orchestrated. But then Elias said something that made her blood run cold. "Jordan didn't just disappear. He's not a victim. He's part of it." Natalie shook her head. Impossible. Jordan was the only family she trusted. He had stood by her when everyone else turned away. "He was recruited 2 years ago," Elias continued. "Corporate found out he was your brother. They offered him a deal, his debts erased, a job in the tech division, access to insider investment opportunities. In return, he kept tabs on you, made sure you didn't dig too deep. The moment he realized you were getting close again, he fed you just enough to keep you moving in circles." Natalie felt sick. The late-night calls, the messages, the sudden visits, the carefully placed concerns that led her to suspect everyone but him. And now he was gone, not taken, not missing. Gone because his job was done. She could barely breathe. Every memory she had of him now felt like a lie wrapped in warmth. "But why would he warn me?" she asked, voice cracking. Elias looked away. Maybe he grew a conscience. Or maybe it was part of the script. Keep you just scared enough to run, but not angry enough to fight. Natalie stood up, pacing. "So what now? What do they want?" Elias hesitated, then said something that shifted the ground beneath her feet. "They want you to stop because you're the only one left who can prove the core system was fraudulent from the start. But there's more. Something even bigger. Buried under the shop is a backup drive, a hardware key, containing real-time data logs from every misdiagnosed car since the program launched. It's still there, hidden in plain sight. And if you get it, you can expose everything." Natalie stared at him, heart thudding like a drum. The truth wasn't just hidden, it was buried beneath her own workplace, under the same concrete floor she walked on every day. But now the stakes had changed. Now she wasn't just fighting for her name, her safety, or even justice for 1 or 2 victims. She was fighting to uncover a deception that had been killing people for years. She nodded, her expression hardening. "Then we dig." But just as they started planning the next steps, a noise echoed outside the garage. Tires crunching, doors slamming. A figure moved past the broken window. Elias looked out and froze. "We're out of time," he whispered. "They're here." Natalie's breath caught in her throat as the sound of heavy footsteps echoed just beyond the rusted garage doors. Her instinct screamed to run, but her legs wouldn't move. rooted by the tidal wave of betrayal and panic crashing down on her. Elias, calm on the surface but visibly pale, motioned for her to stay low. He pulled open a trapdoor in the corner, revealing a cramped maintenance crawl space. They ducked inside just as the outer door was kicked open, the thud reverberating like thunder in her chest. She held her breath as voices, muffled but cold and methodical, swept into the building. Whoever they weren't looking to talk. They were here to erase. In the tight, dusty dark, Natalie's mind spun. Every corner of her life had been touched by this deception, twisted into a trap. Her brother, her only remaining family, had become the face of her worst betrayal. She could still see his smile, hear his voice from their last call, so convincing in its concern. And now, with proof buried beneath her own shop floor and the people behind this closing in, she had to make a decision that no one should have to face, confront him and risk everything, or disappear and live with the silence. But she knew herself too well. Silence wasn't an option. The truth was now her lifeline, even if it pulled her under. When the danger passed and the garage fell silent again, Elias climbed out first. He checked the lot and gave a quick nod. It was clear for now. But it wouldn't be for long. Their enemies weren't amateurs. They were professionals with resources, reach, and a ruthlessness that came with power and protection. As they started for the back road exit, Elias paused and looked her dead in the eye. "Natalie, I need to ask you something, and you won't like it. If you go back to the shop to get that drive, you're going to need help. And the only person who knows where the original access point is Jordan." She recoiled. "You expect me to trust him after what you just told me?" Elias didn't flinch.
No.
"I expect you to use him. He's emotionally tethered to you, he always was. And if he's turned against them, even for a second, we can use that. But it has to be you. He won't talk to me." Natalie stared at the horizon, where the distant lights of her small town flickered like stars trying to shine through pollution. If she confronted Jordan, there were only two outcomes. He'd break and tell her everything, or he'd deny it and confirm that the brother she loved was gone for good. But there was no way around it now. She had to look him in the eye and ask him if he sold her out for a paycheck. She had to find out if the bond they'd clung to since childhood was real, or just one more piece of fiction in this carefully designed nightmare. The next day, she drove to his apartment. The place looked untouched, like he had stepped out for coffee and never returned. But when she picked the lock and stepped inside, she knew he'd been there recently. His phone was on the counter. A half-eaten takeout container sat in the sink. And on the kitchen table was something that stopped her heart, a flash drive, unlabeled, sitting on a folded sheet of paper. She unfolded it with trembling hands. The handwriting was unmistakably his. "If you're reading this, I made my choice. I couldn't live with what I've done. Everything you need to find the access point is on this drive. I don't know how much time I have left, but I'll buy you as much as I can. I'm sorry, Nat." The words blurred as her eyes welled with tears. Was this his way of making it right? Or was it just another manipulation? Before she could decide, her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She answered, expecting another warning, another cryptic voice. Instead, it was a woman.
Calm. Polished.
Chillingly precise. "Ms. Monroe, we're aware you're in possession of sensitive materials. You now have one option. Turn over the drive within the hour, or your brother won't be the only one who disappears. Make the smart choice. Don't be a martyr." Natalie stood frozen in the silence that followed. This wasn't just about evidence anymore. This was a high-stakes chess game with real lives hanging in the balance, and someone was playing her like she was just another pawn. But the difference was she knew the board now. She had the files. She had the access. And she had a decision to make. Give them what they wanted and guarantee her safety, or gamble it all and bring down the entire corrupt machine, even if it cost her everything. And as she stared at the flash drive in her palm, her reflection flickering in the darkened kitchen window, she realized something chilling. The truth might not save her, but it might be the only thing that could finally bring the whole rotten system to its knees. Natalie's heart pounded so loud it muffled the sound of tires grinding gravel as she fled the apartment complex. The flash drive clutched tightly in her hand like it was her last lifeline. The woman on the phone had sounded calm, but beneath her poise was a warning clear as a gun pressed to the back of your neck. Run, and they'll find you. Surrender, and they'll bury you quiet. There were no rules anymore. No safe places. Only choices, each more dangerous than the last. And yet, Natalie wasn't running anymore. She was driving straight into the fire. She and Elias holed up in a decommissioned auto shop just outside the city limits, a place with no security cameras, no Wi-Fi, and a thick metal door that had survived more than one riot in its day. It was here they finally decrypted the files. Elias's laptop hummed as line after line of data flooded the screen. Bank transactions, security footage, confidential documents that had clearly been ripped straight from federal databases. The scope of the operation left them breathless. This wasn't just some local auto insurance scam or a dirty town council under the table. This was organized, multi-state, high-dollar racketeering, government contracts funneled through shell companies, mechanic shops acting as laundering fronts, entire repair chains operating as a cover for black market part swapping, and names, far too many names. Natalie scanned the list and felt her throat tighten. Local cops, state senators, even her former mentor, the man who first taught her to rebuild a transmission by feel alone. His name was highlighted on a personnel transfer slip, dated 3 years back, coinciding with the day her old boss was pushed out of the shop. They'd replaced him, not because he was incompetent, but because he wasn't willing to play along. The deeper she dug, the more faces she recognized. Customers,
Friends.
neighbors, the man who always came in for oil changes and chatted about his dog, the mother with the minivan who used to bake cookies for the shop on holidays. All of them connected to the network, willing or not. But the most devastating name of all came next, Elias. His login credentials were buried deep in the server logs, dating back 18 months. Natalie's stomach dropped, her eyes locking onto him across the table as he read over the files in silence, unmoved. "How long?" she asked, voice low and sharp. He didn't flinch. "Long enough to regret it every day." She stood, the weight of betrayal crushing her ribs. "You said you were helping me. That you didn't know." "I didn't know it would go this far," he snapped, slamming his hand on the table. "They told me it was a surveillance job, vetting a suspected mole inside one of the shops. I didn't even know it was you until the 3rd month. And by then, I was in too deep. If I left, they'd erase me, just like they did to your brother." Natalie's voice cracked. "So you watched me? For months? You sat in my garage, you fixed engines with me, ate with me, all while feeding them everything I did." "I stopped," he said quietly, "the second I saw them frame you for the parts fraud. I tried to pull out. They blackmailed me. I've been working from the inside, Natalie, feeding them junk, misdirecting them, but it's only bought us so much time." But it didn't matter. The trust was gone. Every word from his mouth could have been the truth or another layer of manipulation, and she didn't have the luxury to figure it out now. Because the flash drive hadn't just uncovered secrets, it had sent out a digital flare. The second they decrypted those files, a trace went up, and someone was already on their way. Outside, tires screeched. Black SUVs. 3 of them. Natalie bolted for the service tunnel under the lift, but Elias grabbed her arm. "We need to upload the files to the public server now. If they get deleted, everything goes with them. And what if they already know we have them? What if this whole thing has been a setup from the start? Then we go down swinging," he said, "but the truth goes out with us." Natalie hesitated, her every instinct screaming to escape, but her hands moved to the laptop. She plugged in the backup drive and initiated the upload to a mirror network used by whistleblowers. The bar began to tick up, 5%, then 12%. Then the lights cut out. The emergency generator kicked on a moment later, flooding the shop with red light. They were out of time. And in that moment, Natalie knew this wasn't just about her name, or the shop, or even Jordan. This was about exposing a rot that had seeped into every corner of the system, one that relied on good people staying quiet, staying scared. As footsteps closed in and the back door rattled on its hinges, Elias pulled a metal box from beneath the desk, a signal jammer and remote deadman switch. If they get in before it uploads, we set this off. The system wipes itself, and the entire network gets a message. The story won't die. But we will, Natalie whispered. Not if we hold out just long enough. She looked at him, not as a friend, not as a traitor, but as someone who finally understood what was at stake. And then, just before the first window shattered, a second laptop pinged with an incoming connection. Someone else was logging into the drive. Someone from inside the network. And just like that, everything shifted again. The laptop screen glowed like a lighthouse in a storm, blinking with a connection request from an encrypted user who had the clearance level to access the darkest corners of the exposed network. Natalie froze, her eyes darting from the screen to the door, which now shook violently as someone pounded against it with calculated force. Elias's fingers hovered over the jammer, his jaw clenched. They both knew that if they tripped it too early, the truth would die in fragments, half-uploaded files, unverified claims, data too easily discredited. But if they waited too long, they'd vanish into the same silence that had swallowed so many others before them. The screen suddenly flickered, and a live video feed initiated. A grainy camera showed a dim office with drawn blinds, and sitting at the desk was the last person Natalie expected to see, Regina Caldwell, the city's beloved councilwoman, the same woman who had publicly rallied to protect small businesses like Natalie's during the Parts fraud hearings. The woman who had once shaken her hand, looked her in the eye, and promised she'd clean the filth out of this town. But the image on screen now wasn't the warm, concerned public servant. It was someone colder. Someone exhausted from hiding behind 1,000 smiles. You weren't supposed to see any of this, Regina said, her voice low but steady. I didn't want it to end like this. Natalie stepped closer to the laptop. Then why are you here? Why show your face now? Because it's all collapsing anyway, Regina replied. And if I have to go down, I'd rather do it on my terms. Elias leaned in, his voice tight. You built this entire operation. The shell companies, the contracts, this was all you. Regina didn't flinch. I didn't build it. I inherited it. I just learned to use it better than those before me. What you found is only a fraction of it. We've been funneling federal transportation dollars through repair chains since 2008. Ever wonder why no shop in the city ever really shuts down? Why mechanics get replaced overnight and complaints vanish from state records? Natalie's fists clenched. My brother found out, didn't he? Regina's silence was louder than any answer. That was confirmation enough. But why me? Natalie said, her voice cracking. Why frame me? You were an anomaly. You didn't play the game. You refused the city contracts. You didn't join this certified mechanic alliance. You were honest. That's dangerous in our world. The window behind Regina suddenly burst open on the feed. She spun just as two masked agents stormed in. A gun was drawn. A single shot fired. The feed cut to black. The upload bar jumped, 78%. Natalie staggered back, stunned. Did she just? Elias stared blankly at the screen. Either she tried to save herself, or silence everything in one move. Before they could react, the metal door blew inward, the lock obliterated by a breaching tool. Black-clad operatives stormed in with weapons raised, their faces hidden behind tactical masks. But instead of firing, they stopped. One of them stepped forward and removed her helmet. It was Detective Helena Marks, the same officer who'd interrogated Natalie weeks ago, the same one who had dropped veiled warnings but never followed up. I told you to stop digging, Helena said. But you didn't. And because of that, we may have a shot at bringing this entire operation down. Natalie blinked. Wait, you're not here to arrest us? Helena's face was pale. We thought you were working with them. But when the flash drive went live, it triggered a federal watch list. This entire town has been monitored as a possible corruption hub for years. You just proved it. We needed a whistleblower. Elias laughed bitterly. So this was the plan all along? Use us to light the match. No, Helena said. The plan was to keep the fire from ever starting. But people like you two, you lit it anyway. The upload completed. Natalie turned to Elias, her breath catching. The weight of everything they'd lost, their safety, their reputation, her brother's life, suddenly felt like more than just pain. It felt like fuel, because now the truth was out. Helena stepped aside as agents swarmed in to secure the equipment. "You're both going to have to disappear for a while," she said. "Witness protection. New names, new lives." But Natalie shook her head.
No.
"I want to face them. In court. In the media. On the record." "That's not safe," Helena warned. "It was never safe," Natalie said. "But neither is silence." As they were led out into the night, a new storm rolling in overhead, Natalie looked back one last time at the auto shop that had once been her sanctuary. It wasn't just a place of work. It had become the battleground for something far bigger than car repairs and grease-stained coveralls. And then, as the camera slowly pulled back to reveal a man watching the news feed from an undisclosed location, smiling faintly as headlines about the corruption scandal scrolled across the screen, it became clear that Regina Caldwell hadn't been the top of the food chain after all. The real mastermind hadn't even entered the story yet. 3 months later, the air in the courtroom felt heavier than the humid Georgia heat pressing against the windows. Natalie stood in a navy blazer she never thought she'd wear, buttoned, stiff, courtroom appropriate, but she wore it like armor. Across from her, rows of camera crews, sketch artists, and reporters whispered her name like it had become something more than just a woman who fixed transmissions. Now she was the mechanic who exposed a city. What no one could see were the scars beneath the fabric, of sleepless nights, of watching Elias nearly break under pressure, of having to speak her brother's name in past tense as she gave sworn testimony. But in that moment, she knew something had shifted in the way people looked at her. No longer with doubt. No longer through the lens of gender or assumption, but with recognition. She had survived the storm. She had driven straight into the fire and come out carrying the truth. Regina Caldwell, though absent in the flesh, remained very present in the headlines. Her final act, broadcast live before the feed cut, became one of the most searched and debated moments online. #ReginaConfession trended for days. Her death sparked a chain reaction that forced resignations across local and state levels, including 2 federal transportation officials. New indictments kept coming, and the scale of the fraud stretched further than even the FBI had anticipated. Hundreds of mechanics across multiple cities came forward in the aftermath, admitting they'd been pressured, bribed, or threatened into playing along. Some were arrested. Some were granted immunity. But for the first time, Natalie wasn't standing alone. Elias decided to leave town. He had too many enemies, too many memories in that dusty little garage on the east side. He left Natalie the title to the property and a single envelope that held every photo he'd taken throughout the ordeal, with a note that simply read, "You were always the engine. I just turned the key." He didn't say goodbye in person, he said he couldn't, but Natalie understood. Some people leave quietly, like breath from a cracked exhaust. Detective Helena Marks stayed. She wasn't interested in fame or interviews, but she worked behind the scenes to make sure Natalie remained protected. They met every Friday now, no longer in interrogation rooms, but over coffee. She never said it out loud, but Natalie could tell she respected her in a way no badge or title could mandate. They were both women who'd spent too long being underestimated, and now they didn't need to speak it to feel it. The garage reopened eventually, but not as it once was. Natalie turned it into a co-op, one of the first female-run, non-profit auto shops in the region. She partnered with trade schools, hired formerly incarcerated women looking for second chances, and taught night classes on basic auto repair. She never charged veterans, never overbilled single moms, and her waitlist stretched for months. But some nights, when the garage lights were off and the tools were all put away, Natalie would sit alone with a cup of gas station coffee and stare at the old security monitor that had once captured the footage leading to everything. And she'd wonder about the man in the shadows, the one watching from afar when the story ended. The one no one could name. He never resurfaced. No emails, no threats, no trace. It was as if he vanished into the same digital fog from which he first appeared. That mystery remained, tight-lipped, sealed off, and while part of her wanted answers, another part of her had learned to live with the unknown. After all, justice wasn't always a straight road. Sometimes it was just a matter of surviving the curves. And then one afternoon, a beat-up delivery truck pulled up to the shop. The driver, an old man with oil-stained hands and a weathered baseball cap, handed her a small black box with no return address. Inside was a single spark plug and a folded note. It read, "You rebuilt more than an engine. You rewired the system. Thank you for keeping the hood open." No signature. No logo. Just that cryptic message and a subtle reminder that somewhere, someone was still watching. Natalie smiled, not out of fear, but with the quiet satisfaction of a mechanic who finally understood that not every fix requires a wrench. Some require grit, some require heart, and some require a fire that can't be extinguished. And with that, she walked back into the garage, wiped her hands on her jeans, and got back to work. Because justice, like any engine, only runs if someone's willing to keep it tuned.